They think he wants the high, but what he wants is silence, not the kind you find in peace, the kind you find in oblivion, because inside him is a war no one else sees, and every addiction is just a moment where that war goes quiet. Jung didn't see addicts as weak. He saw them as wounded priests of the soul, performing dark rituals to escape a life stripped of meaning. This isn't about drugs. It's about men who use anything, a bottle, a screen, a woman, to fill a hole they were taught to ignore. Because the truth no one says out loud is that the addict isn't chasing destruction. He's chasing resurrection, but in the wrong direction. And if you've ever felt like you're spiraling, disappearing, caught between numbness and need, then what you're about to hear isn't advice. It's a map. He says he's done, but the next time silence hits, he's back. Not because it feels good, but because nothing else feels real. Pain becomes proof of existence, and numbness a kind of death. He doesn't chase pleasure. He chases a wound that bleeds familiarity. Every relapse isn't indulgence, it's confession. The addiction isn't to the substance, it's to the sensation of being. He doesn't return for the high, he returns for the echo of something lost. A chaos that mirrors his self-worth, a ruin that feels like home. To him, destruction isn't failure, it's identity. Because the wound became his name when no one else gave him one. This is the trap. He mistakes survival for meaning. If it hurt and he stayed, then it must have mattered, right? That's what trauma does. It teaches you love equals endurance. You begin to believe that bleeding is a form of belonging. But what if it's not loyalty? What if it's exile? He's not addicted to what broke him. He's addicted to avoiding what breaks him when it's gone. What's left when the pain stops? Just the silence he's never faced. He doesn't ask, why can't I stop? Because the answer terrifies him. The truth, he doesn't want to feel what the pain is protecting him from. The high was never about joy. It was anesthesia. The soul craves pattern. Even when that pattern is torment, every repetition is a ritual, a sacred reenactment of an old betrayal. Maybe a father's neglect, maybe a mother's coldness. Whatever it is, it carved its name into his nervous system. And now he returns, not to heal it, but to rehearse it. He'll call it love. He'll call it passion. He'll say, it's complicated. But it's not. It's just a scar pretending to be a compass. He keeps finding the same pain in different costumes, because the script never changed, only the actors. And the director? Still the same boy who thought pain meant presence. You weren't in love with the poison. You were in love with what it made you forget. What you call craving is a rebellion against your own numbness. You didn't fail to quit. You failed to grieve. And that's the fracture that still whispers your name. He doesn't control the chaos outside, so he becomes guard over his own destruction. One click, one shot, one drink, and the ritual begins. In a life where everything feels random, this is his sacred order. Predictable, reliable, his kingdom of ruin, ruled by routine. It's not freedom he's after, it's control, even if it kills him. He doesn't chase the thrill, he chases the script, the same room, the same lie, the same descent. Because in this loop he gets to decide the beginning and the end. No surprises, no rejections, just pain, scheduled. He is not escaping life, he is editing it. Jung called it a counterfeit ritual. It mimics transformation, but delivers only repetition. Like a priest in reverse, he offers his soul for a moment of control. He trades meaning for mastery, integrity for illusion. He bows before a god he built from his own avoidance. There's power in knowing what comes next, even if it's collapse. The drink won't leave, the screen won't judge, the hit won't betray. In a world that moves without mercy, addiction stands still. It offers a throne, inside a cage. And when you've lived as a puppet, even a cage feels like choice. He says he's in control, but he obeys. Every time. It's not the craving that controls him. It's the silence that comes if he stops, because once he stops, the questions come. The truths arrive, and he's not ready to meet himself without the script, so he rewrites the scene. Again, again, again. He'll say, I choose this, but it's not choice. It's confinement disguised as comfort, because choosing pain still feels like power, even if that power is borrowed, bloody and blind, even if it rots the body and empties the soul. At least he chose it. Real control doesn't repeat. It rebels. It walks out mid-scene. It burns the old script. But rebellion terrifies the addict, because rebellion is uncharted. And uncharted means vulnerable. He'd rather bleed with certainty than heal with doubt. You didn't master the addiction. You surrendered to the mask it gave you. It let you feel strong, focused, alive for a minute. But it's not strength if it vanishes when the ritual breaks. You've been worshipping what you built to avoid yourself. You crowned your captor and called it coping. He says he's craving, but he's really mourning without knowing it. Every hit, every scroll, every sip, a ritual of unburied loss, not just of people, but of moments, of innocence, of who he used to be. Grief doesn't always wear black. Sometimes it looks like desire. Sometimes it just looks like escape. There are things he never said goodbye to, so they followed him. The father he needed, but never had. The dream he gave up on quietly while pretending to be fine. The woman who left or stayed just long enough to erode him. Grief that never ended, only changed its costume. He thinks he's chasing a feeling, but he's just avoiding a burial, because to grieve would mean to admit that it's gone, that he wasn't enough to save it, or keep it, or even name it. So he distracts, he medicates, he forgets, but the grief waits, always. Jung warned, what you suppress becomes your master. Grief doesn't vanish, it mutates into obsession, into hunger, into the strange fire behind every relapse. He's not weak, he's haunted. And the haunting began the day he swallowed his scream. The world taught him that tears are failure. So he turned emotion into appetite. He doesn't eat for hunger, doesn't scroll for curiosity, doesn't drink for celebration. He consumes to forget what he never faced. Until he mourns, he will keep consuming. Not because he enjoys it, but because grief has no exit without expression. And unexpressed grief doesn't die, it festers. It becomes the noise behind the addiction, the pressure behind every escape plan. It's not about fixing the habit, it's about naming the ghost. What have you lost that you never gave yourself permission to grieve? What memory is still stitched into your nervous system like a scar? What absence are you trying to feed? Addiction isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's just about silence, the silence that should have followed a proper goodbye, but instead became a craving with no name. Your addiction is a funeral you refuse to attend. He says he wants peace, but peace feels like death when you've only ever known war. Healing threatens the story he's built, the one where struggle makes him worthy. Without the chaos, who is he? Without the wound, what does he become? Some men don't fear the pain. They fear the silence that follows its end. Because silence means facing a self they've never met. When the ego is built on suffering, calm feels like erasure. He's bonded to his pain like a soldier to his scars. Healing doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like identity loss. If he stops fighting, does he still exist? If he no longer bleeds, will anyone notice he's alive? Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their soul. And that's exactly it. Destruction is predictable. It's a known hell, a familiar fire. Healing, it's foreign, vulnerable, unmapped, and the soul, when finally faced, demands truth. He doesn't know how to live without the fight, the climb, the crash, the dark. It became his language. Even joy feels suspicious now. Even rest feels dangerous, like he's letting his guard down. So he runs again, not from pain, but from possibility. To heal means to rebuild, and rebuilding demands choice. He can no longer blame the poison. He has to look in the mirror. No more villains, no more excuses, just the man, raw and awake. That kind of exposure terrifies him, because now failure is no longer circumstantial. It's personal. Ask him what he'd lose if the addiction disappeared. Not what he'd gain. What he'd lose. The identity, the coping script, the quiet martyrdom. Sometimes we hold on to pain because it's the only place we feel honest. Everything else feels like performance. Healing threatens the drama that made him feel significant. Without the relapse, who checks on him? Without the wound, who listens? He doesn't just crave the substance, he craves the attention his pain once earned. And without that, he fears becoming invisible. The real fear isn't dying, it's being reborn. Because rebirth demands the burial of your old self, not the one they hurt, but the one who survived by staying broken. And that man doesn't go quietly. She walked in like peace, but left you in pieces. And still, you crave her. Not the woman, the state she gave you, that rush, that validation, that beautiful lie. She was never medicine, she was morphine. And you weren't in love, you were in withdrawal. You made her your ritual, the text, the silence, the chaos, a cycle. When she praised you, you felt worthy. When she vanished, you unraveled. That wasn't romance, that was limerence. She wasn't your partner, she was your supplier. And you got hooked on the illusion she let you build. Jung warned, the anima, when projected, becomes fantasy. You didn't see her. You saw the soul you abandoned, reflected in her eyes. She became your lost mother, your unclaimed muse, your psychic fix. She didn't complete you. She mirrored the parts of you still unloved. And that made her impossible to let go. Every message you didn't get was a hit denied. Every memory, a rerun of your favorite delusion. You kept replaying scenes, hoping for a new ending. But the script was carved in your nervous system, not hers. You weren't addicted to her. You were addicted to who you were when she chose you. She lit you up, yes, but only because you were already empty. You didn't fall for her. You fell for how she made you forget. And when she left, she didn't just leave, she took your reflection with her. That's why it hurt so much. You weren't mourning her. You were mourning the man she let you pretend to be. Love isn't supposed to feel like panic, or scarcity, or starvation. That wasn't intimacy, it was emotional gambling. You kept pulling the lever, hoping this time she'd stay. But the house always wins, especially when the house is built on projection. She was the storm, and you mistook it for a sunrise. What you called passion was actually a trauma loop. She activated your ache, and you called it depth. But love doesn't haunt. It heals. It doesn't deplete. It deepens. She didn't love you. She triggered you. She wasn't your peace. She was your fix. And now that she's gone, you get to ask the real question. What part of yourself did you outsource to her? And are you finally ready to bring it home? At some point, he stopped being a person and became a pattern. Not a man with a story, but a symptom with a name. They called him the addict, as if that's all he was. But the tragedy isn't that others stopped seeing him. It's that he did too. He used to have dreams, opinions, a center. Now, he's a reaction, a cycle, a ghost chasing comfort. He performs the ritual without even thinking. Wake up, regret, chase relief, collapse. It's not life, it's choreography. Jung warned, the addict becomes possessed by an archetype. And when that happens, you don't live. You operate. You become the avatar of your wound. Your name fades. Your voice weakens. And all that remains is the compulsion. He says, I can't stop. But what he really means is, I don't know who I am without this. The addiction stole his identity, then offered a fake one in return. And he took it because some mask is better than no face. He wears it everywhere. It's become his skin. But beneath it, silence, void, confession. He forgot what made him alive before the addiction. The books, the fire, the reckless joy. Now even joy feels foreign, like it belongs to someone else, because to reclaim himself would mean returning from exile, and exiles don't come back without a fight. When he looks in the mirror, he doesn't see a man. He sees a burden, a hangover, a mistake in progress, but that's not the truth. That's the voice of the shadow, distorted by shame. The real self, still there, waiting, watching, asking only one thing: speak my name. You are not the pattern. You are the absence the pattern was built to hide. You're not the high. You're the hunger beneath it. You're not the mistake. You're the man still standing in its wake. And that man is not invisible. He's just forgotten. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. He falls again, and the first thing he feels isn't pain, it's guilt. A heavy, choking weight that whispers, you'll never change. But guilt isn't the cure, it's the trap. Every time he breaks, he doesn't just relapse, he punishes himself. And the punishment becomes part of the addiction. It's a loop. Fall, hate yourself, crave relief, fall again. The craving isn't separate from the guilt, it's fed by it. The worse he feels, the more he needs the ritual. And the more he uses, the deeper the guilt cuts. It's not just a cycle, it's a sentence. Jung saw this clearly. What we refuse to love in ourselves gains power over us. The more he hates the addict, the stronger the addiction grows. Because he's not fighting the behavior, he's rejecting the self beneath it. And that self, desperate for mercy, keeps reaching for the only comfort it knows. Even when it burns, he tells himself, I'm disgusting, I'm weak. But that voice isn't discipline, says it's a prison guard. He believes shame will save him, but shame doesn't transform. It deforms, until the man becomes nothing but the echo of his regret. This is why he can't stop, because he hasn't forgiven himself. He thinks sobriety is a reward for perfection, but it's not. It's the result of mourning, not the craving, not the failure, but the man he abandoned along the way. The one who needed kindness and got silence. He doesn't need more willpower. He needs a funeral, a sacred goodbye to the self-image that only knew how to suffer. Because guilt doesn't correct, it consumes. It turns relapse into identity and pain into prophecy. You did it again, so this is who you are. But that's a lie, a weapon disguised as a truth. You are not the behavior. You are not the moment you broke. You are the witness, the one who keeps rising. And that man, he doesn't need guilt. He needs redemption, not as a fantasy, but as a reckoning. He stopped talking long before he stopped hoping. There's a kind of silence that isn't peace. It's disappearance, not the calm of still water, but the void of an abandoned room. He says nothing because he believes nothing will help. And that belief becomes his coffin. At first, the silence was survival. No one listened, no one stayed, so he kept it in. But over time, silence stopped being defense and became identity. He forgot how to ask, how to admit, how to bleed in words. Now he just endures, with a smile made of stone. Jung warned, what remains unsaid rules us, and his silence is loud. It commands his choices, poisons his hope. Every emotion locked inside becomes a ghost in his system. And ghosts don't fade. They whisper, they pull, they scream through relapse, not conversation. People say, speak up, but he doesn't have the language anymore. His pain doesn't speak in words. It speaks in cravings, in exhaustion, in isolation. It speaks through what he avoids, not what he confesses. And that silence has become his most loyal addiction. He doesn't reach out, not because he's proud, but because he's ashamed. Ashamed of how far he's fallen. Ashamed that he still needs help. He imagines speaking will shatter him, but it's the silence that's been slicing him open, piece by piece. Not with noise, with neglect. He thinks strength is suffering quietly, that real men endure, that emotion is weakness. But silence isn't strength, it's surrender. It's the lie men are trained to live until they no longer live at all. It's the mask that fits too well. What if the strongest thing he could do was whisper, "I need help"? What if the first rebellion isn't quitting the substance, but breaking the silence that feeds it, because pain that stays hidden becomes prophecy, and the only way out is through the sound of your own voice? Your silence was never noble. It was a slow disappearance. And if you want to return, not just heal, but exist, you'll have to speak, even if your voice shakes, especially then. So here you are, not broken, not cursed, just exiled from the self you forgot how to be. You kept asking, "Why can't I stop?" But the better question is, what was I silencing that loudly? Because every relapse, every craving, it wasn't weakness. It was a distorted prayer, a scream in ritual form. Your way of saying, "I'm still here, and I still hurt." Boo, but now the mirror's cracked wide open, and you can't pretend not to see yourself anymore. So ask yourself this: what if the craving was never about pleasure, but about remembering who you were before you disappeared? What if the woman, the substance, the chaos were just masks over a hunger for meaning? What if the addiction wasn't your end, but your invitation to speak, to feel, to rebuild, not with shame, but with sovereignty? You are not here to recover, you are here to resurrect. So if you're ready to stop lying to yourself, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and continue this journey of brutal self-knowledge and emotional freedom. And if addiction is a response to silence, then what happens when the silence wears a beautiful face? Schopenhauer tried to warn men, not about women, but about the illusions we build around them. Most didn't listen. Will you?